students, welcome to the lecture on business strategies for sustainable development, and after this lecture we will be able to learn the following objectives. Explain the implication for business and practical consideration. Describe the enhancing management system. Discuss the design and execute an implementation plan. Explain the supportive corporate culture and standards of performance. Describe the prepare reports and enhance internal monitoring processes. Explain the management, leadership and deciding on a strategy. Discuss small business and private company consideration. Business sustainability is becoming increasingly important for managers in the modern economy. Business sustainability can be described as a holistic continuous improvement process that includes the sound management of people and the environment. Business sustainability makes good business sense because the benefits feed directly back into the bottom line. Rather than being just another thing to do, business sustainability as often urging concept that involves doing everything better and more efficiently. True sustainability must be integrated into all operation of business, from policy and management through to on-ground activities such as purchasing, production and distribution. Sustainable development for Shell means balancing short and long-term interests in a way that allows us to integrate economic, environmental and social consideration into the business decision. It underpins how we develop and operate the projects and facilities and the way to manage supply chains. We are growing our production for the future by finding and developing additional natural gas and oil resources. Let us discuss some implication for business. It has become a cliche that environmental problems are substantial and that economic growth contributes to them. A common response is stricter environmental regulation, which often inhibits growth. The result can be a trade-off between a healthy environment on the one hand and healthy growth on the other. As a consequence, opportunities for business may be constrained. However, there are some forms of development that are both environmentally and socially sustainable. They lead not to a trade-off but to an improved environment, together with development that does not draw down our environmental capital. This is what sustainable development is all about, a revolutionary change in the way we approach these issues. What are the practical considerations? While business traditionally seeks precision and practically as a basic for its planning efforts, sustainable development is a concept that is not amenable to simple and universal definition. The role of business in contributing to sustainable development remains indefinite. While all business enterprises can make a contribution towards its attainment, the ability to make a difference varies by sector and organization size. Some executives consider the principal objective of business to be making money. Others recognize a broader social role. There is no consensus among business leaders as to the best balance between narrow self-interest and actions taken for the good of society.
My name's Andy Hall and I live in the Netherlands. I'm a materials scientist and engineer and have spent most of my professional career in product development. I work at Sustainable Value Cycle Solutions, and here's my idea to screw business as usual. Consumer goods companies are fully focused on the targets of revenue and business growth, but it's widely recognized that constant innovation is needed to realize these targets. What's often forgotten is there's an important step between innovation and revenue, and that is the creation of value. This is what the customer recognizes and is prepared to spend money on. It's also of note that the best performing companies are the ones that not only create shareholder value, but stakeholder value. So designing for value drives this whole process. But there's a problem with this formula for business success. If this success formula is used in our current take, make and dispose economy, this just leads to an accelerated depletion of resources and more stuff coming onto the market, which ultimately gets dumped or burned. And that's not a sustainable situation in any shape or form. Screw that. So how can we modify this success formula to make it sustainable? We can add sustainability to our innovation drivers, and we can change the economy from linear to circular. But we don't have a circular economy, I hear you shout. It doesn't matter. You can get the benefits today. How? Here's 4 steps to get started. Step 1. Communicate the concept simply. Instead of looking at a product life cycle, we look at a value life cycle. Value sourcing and creation in the product, and then value collection and recovery in the materials. That's it. And anyone can get that, right? Step 2. Design value products for the system. Great products with an added consumer benefit. What if the coffee machine also purified the water or added a small dose of vitamins? Step 3. Use only trustful and recoverable materials. These are materials where the source is known, the content is known, and they are suitable for the usage application. The recoverability must be both technically and commercially available, and the next product life has been thought about. Step 4. Design the products with the idea that the consumer is not the king or the boss, but your best friend. All designs have a consequence, so make sure yours is the health and happiness of your best friend. It will make you feel good and others proud of you. In doing more good instead of less bad, you will actually enrich everybody's lives. And here are the immediate benefits. Great products that really do what we want them to do, lower costs through better design and value recovery, elimination of toxins and waste, delighted customers, brand image enhancement, and improved employee engagement. And that is the multi-stakeholder value that leads to revenue and business growth we're all looking for. And by the way, did I mention that it's sustainable?
Positive science of change. This positive change in attitudes and practices is echoed by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which says there is now a realistic prospect of harmonizing environmental and economic consideration, and thus of gradually incorporating these objectives in policy. Let us discuss about enhancing management system. The concept of sustainable development needs to be incorporated into the policies and processes of a business if it is to follow sustainable development principle. This does not mean that new management methods need to be invented. Rather, it requires a new cultural orientation and extensive refinements to systems, practices, and procedure. The 2 main areas of the management system that must be changed are those concerned with a greater accountability to non-traditional stakeholders, continuous improvement of reporting practices. Developing an effective management framework for sustainable development requires addressing both decision-making and governance. The concept of sustainable development must be integrated both into business planning and into management information and control system. The steps that are required for managing an enterprise according to sustainable development principles are given below. Perform a stakeholder analysis. A stakeholder analysis is required in order to identify all the parties that are directly or indirectly affected by the enterprise operations. It sets out the issues, concerns, and information needs of the stakeholders with respect to the organization's sustainable development activities. The stakeholder analysis begins by identifying the various groups affected by the business activities. These include shareholders, creditors, regulators, employees, customers, suppliers, and the community in which the enterprise operates. It must also include people who are affected or who consider themselves affected by the enterprise effect on the biosphere and on social capital. After the stakeholders have been identified, management should prepare a description of the needs and expectation that these groups have. After the stakeholders have been identified, management should prepare a description of the needs and expectation that these groups have. This should set out both current and future needs in order to capture sustainable development concept. The key is to analyze how the organization activities affect each of stakeholders, either positively or negatively. The stakeholder analysis may reveal conflicted expectation. For example, customer may demand a new environmental safe products, while employees might be concerned that such policy could threaten their jobs. Set sustainable development policies and objectives. The next objective is to articulate the basic values that the enterprise expects its employees to follow with respect to sustainable development and to set targets for operating performance. Senior management is responsible for formulating a sustainable development policy for its organization and for establishing specific objectives. Drafting a policy statement that is both inspirational and capable of influencing behavior is a challenging task. However, the benefits justify the effort. An effective external monitoring system is necessary for directors and senior management in order to ensure that sustainable development policies, objectives, and management systems are appropriate for the complex and rapidly changing world in which their business operates. Information should be gathered on key subjects including new and proposed legislation, industry practices and standards, competitors' strategies, community and special interest group policies and activities, trade union concerns, technical developments such as new process technologies. For many enterprises, monitoring and influencing external development means becoming more actively involved in the public policy process. A commitment to sustainable development involves helping to formulate policies that shape external developments so that industry-wide sustainable development objectives are achieved. This external monitoring can be integrated into a firm's strategic management process or else carried out as a separate exercise. Some corporations have social policy committees whose scope covers sustainable development issues. Others have environmental committees with a narrower focus. Now moving further, let's talk about design and execute an implementation plan. It is important to draw up a plan for the management system changes that are needed in order to achieve sustainable development objectives. Translating sustainable development policies into operational terms is a major undertaking that will affect the entire organization. It involves changing the corporate culture and employee attitudes, defining responsibility and accountability, and establishing organizational structures, information reporting systems, and operational practices. As a starting point, after the board and senior management have established their sustainable development objectives, these should be communicated to the various stakeholder groups. Some organizations have ongoing consultation arrangement with stakeholders which facilitates this process. There's little point in embarking on a program to meet stakeholders' needs without first consulting stakeholders to ascertain what those needs are. Business planning process should be modified to reflect the sustainable development priorities, the expanded stakeholders consultation process, and external monitoring needs. Management information systems should be enhanced. In order to ensure that management and employees receive the information they need to assess their performance against the objectives, marketing activities should consider customers' needs regarding sustainability. This will require changes to the organization market research efforts. A successful implementation plan depends on rethinking the corporation. If it is to respond to the paradigm shift associated with sustainable development, it is important to address not only the positive forces for change, but also barriers and sources of resistance. So how to develop a supportive corporate culture? Let us discuss over that now. In order to ensure that the organization and its people give their backing to the sustainable development policies, an appropriate corporate culture is essential. In the process of implementing sustainable development or environmental management policies, many companies have experienced a kind of organizational renewal. The increased participation of employees not only generates practical ideas but also increases enthusiasm for the program itself. Most customers and employees enjoy being a part of an organization that is committed to operating in a socially responsible manner. Implementing sustainable development objectives will probably require managers to change their attitudes. This may be accomplished only after retraining. The concept of sustainable development requires organizations to develop a culture that emphasizes employee participation, continuous learning, and improvement. Internal reporting system can have a significant effect on corporate culture. Equally, it is important that the board provide an oversight and allocation of responsibilities for sustainable development objectives. This umbrella role should include ensuring that responsibilities are assigned in a manner that holds key executives accountable. It also means ensuring that reward and promotion system recognize those people who achieve or help to achieve sustainable development objectives. Now we will discuss about developing measures and standards of performance. The implementation of sustainable development objectives and the preparation of meaningful reports on performance requires appropriate means of measuring performance. Management control as well as external reporting depends in part on the availability of timely information about company operation. This is needed in order to allow management to assess performance against external and internal performance standards using appropriate performance measure. Information system will therefore need to be reviewed to enable the necessary reports to be provided to management. The measures used to assess and report on performance will be influenced by the company's sustainable development objectives and by standards that have been established by government and other public agencies. There is a significant opportunity for the business sector to work with governments in establishing performance measures and standards and to help develop reporting and monitoring systems that are cost effective and which meet the needs of both the public and the business. So the next step in the process is to develop meaningful reports for internal management and stakeholders outlining the enterprise sustainable development objectives and comparing performance against them. Directors and senior executives use internal reports to measure performance, make decisions, and monitor the implementation of their policies and strategies. Shareholders, creditors, employees, and customers as well as the public at large use external corporate reports to evaluate the performance of a corporation and to hold the directors and senior executives accountable for achieving financial, social, and environmental objectives. The system needs incentives and reliable information in order to ensure that there are rewards for positive action. It is ironic that business activity which destroy habitats and pollutes air, land and water produces income and contributes to gross national product. Decision makers within businesses and governments needs a more relevant reporting system. A system that provides a meaningful picture of a company's sustainability achievements is essential for strengthening accountability. This is necessary if an effective relationship is to be maintained with stakeholder groups. Internally, several companies now ask their line managers to include in their regular reporting procedure a statement on whether they have achieved the environmental and sustainable development targets. Every business enterprise should publish at least once a year an external sustainable development report. Ultimately, a universal format for such reports will be desirable. In the meantime, managers and boards of directors should decide on the organization and content of reports. Let us now discuss about the monitoring process. On an ongoing basis, it will be important to develop mechanisms to help directors and senior managers ensure that the sustainable development policies are being implemented. Performance monitoring is well established as an important element of the management process. In many areas, it is directly linked to reporting. The key to any system effectiveness is whether the management monitors operation and outputs on an ongoing basis. Monitoring can take many forms, such as reviewing reports submitted by middle managers, touring operating sites and observing employees performing their duties, holding regular meetings with subordinates to review reports and to seek input on how the procedures and reporting systems might be improved, implementing an environmental auditing program. Organizing internal environmental audit is a practical way to monitor the implementation of management policies. Let us move to our next topic, management leadership. Establishing sustainable development objective Systems and monitoring mechanism requires leadership on the part of senior management and a commitment to continuous improvement. The role of the board: without the active involvement of the board of directors, it will be difficult for an organization to implement sustainable business practices. Corporations are encouraged to establish a social responsibility committee responsible for setting corporate policies on sustainable development and for dealing with issues such as health and safety, personal policies, environmental protection, and codes of business conduct. It is important that corporate sustainable development policies be implemented consistently throughout an organization. Too many business enterprises observe variable levels of corporate ethics and integrity depending on the country in which they are operating. The board also has a role in monitoring the implementation of its policies. It should receive regular reports on how the policies are implemented and should be accountable to its stakeholders on the company's performance against these policies. Self-assessment. The first step for business in adopting sustainable development principle is to assess their current position. Management should know the degree to which the company's activities line up with sustainable development principle. This requires evaluating the company's overall strategy, the performance of specific operation, and the effect of particular activities. This process should compare the company's current performance with the expectation of the stakeholders, deciding on a strategy. Once managers have gained an understanding of how its own operations shape up, they should gauge the performance of other comparable organizations. Comparison against the standards set by other industries and environmental groups can be instructive. This task should be relatively easy if there is reasonable public disclosure, organized industry association, and cooperative sustainable development program. A general plan is needed to describe how and when management expects to achieve that goal, together with the various milestones it will reach along the way. Senior management should review and approve the strategy and the plan before submitting them to the board of directors for final approval. Strategy implementation. Once the strategy and the general plan have been approved, a detailed plan should be prepared indicating how the new strategy will affect operation, management system, information system, and reporting. These should set out measurable goals to be achieved in each area and explain how progress will be monitored. They should also specify spending and training requirements. These plans should be developed through consultation with employees throughout the organization, possibly with the assistance of outside specialists. Applying the proposed framework will be a challenge for all enterprises, but smaller businesses may encounter additional challenges. Besides sustainability reporting, smaller businesses will have to adapt to the new corporate climate with less in-house expertise, fewer resources, and less formal management structure than larger corporations. It will be difficult for them to keep abreast of ever-changing regulatory requirements. Fortunately, small businesses can find much of the expertise they require through industry association, chambers of commerce, corporate environmental groups. There is also a growing body of literature, some of which deals with experiences of companies that have integrated sustainable development into their operations. These cooperative ventures could be more complex and include formal industry programs dealing with matters such as performance standards, monitoring, and technological research. Once the expertise and resource issues have been addressed, the generally less formal management structures found in small businesses can be a positive advantage. There will be fewer people to educate within the enterprise, and there will usually be less resistance to change. In addition, there are usually no formal committees to whom the new strategies must be sold, and no lengthy review and approval procedure to slow the process down. The hands-on management style common to smaller businesses can also aid the monitoring function. Management will be well positioned to spot problems and to make the necessary adjustment. Now, in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. Sustainable development for Shell means balancing short and long-term interests in a way that allows us to integrate economic, environmental, and social consideration into the business decision. The role of business in contributing to sustainable development remains indefinite. The global economy is coming under growing pressure to pay for the restoration of damaged environments. The stakeholders analysis begins by identifying the various groups affected by the business's activities. It is important that sustainable development objectives be clear, concise, and wherever possible expressed in measurable terms. Management control as well as external reporting depends in part on the availability of timely information about company operations.